there, young adventurers. Are you lounging in your comfort zone? It might feel nice, but guess what? It's just like stagnant water. And what do we find lurking there? Mosquitoes. Yuck. These pesky critters are like those negative thoughts that drain your creativity. They'll suck the life out of your dreams if you let them. But look at this. Be like free-flowing water. Always moving, always learning, always becoming better. So let's splash out of that stagnant zone and kick those mosquitoes to the curb. Embrace the adventure, ignite your ideas, and watch your future bloom. Remember, stagnant water attracts mosquitoes. Stay fresh, stay flowing. Let's go. Dare to flow.
Know about rolling down in the down in the
Now I know y'all be loving this shit right here.
about rolling.
What you gonna do?
Rolling.
What you gonna do now?
Down in the rolling.
What you gonna do? Right, y'all be loving this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another episode of Black and Blue. The podcast is just for you. I am your host. I am your coach, Clee. I am your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, and your favorite baker's favorite baker. I am Ecclesiastics 302, the coldest code switching detective. And yes, you spell my name CLEE. That stands for Continuing Law Enforcement Edutainment, because we entertain and we educate along through this process. This is the podcast Black and Blue, where we go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live, we go live with a special guest that's a special guest that's a law enforcement officer or a first responder, whether they're rookie season or retiree. And we talk about their trainings, their experiences, and their publications. We're not going to fall short today. This one, of course, lately they've been a little different. Some have been live, some have been previously recorded, some have been just a recorded show. There's a lot going on, so therefore I have to kind of adjust how things are going. So this one, I'm live right now, of course, but the interview was previously recorded, so therefore I'm gonna play the recording here. It's gonna be great, especially for seasoned and or retiree officers. This one you may want to zone in on and focus in on, because this one's gonna be about the burnout, the transition from the burnout, how the burnout happens. We talk about this all the time here on this platform. This one's entitled "From the Badge to the Boss: Unlock Your Future," and our special guest will be JT King. But before we get to him, you guys already know. I think I got a comment right here. Sorry about that. You guys already know this is streaming on like 5 to 7 different platforms. Many on Facebook under Coach Clee, Black and Blue, Clark Tent, whatever the names may be. A couple on 2 YouTube pages, which either Clee Tillman or Black and Blue. Sergeant Be Safe, but it's not streaming on Sergeant Be Safe. But Sergeant Be Safe has his own platform itself. And this will also be uploaded on the Spotify. So if you haven't subscribed to any of those, subscribe to one or all. We're also on LinkedIn. LinkedIn does me well, and I enjoy going live on LinkedIn. Got a comment here. being that we're on all those different platforms. My guy Rich is in the building. My guy Rich is in the building. I appreciate it. In the house. Hello, Cle. Appreciate it. Hello, Rich. How's it going? I know he's got his own show going on tomorrow. Make sure you guys check him out. I can't wait to attend. As you know, we're in the middle of June, and it seemed like it came too soon. June is a good month for it's one of the fun months. It's kind of hot now. Before it was a little cold and rainy, but the weather's fluctuating. Want to give a shout out to all those law enforcement officers and those first responders that are out there in the field putting in some serious work. You guys know who you are. Be safe out there. Take care of yourselves and continue to do the duties that you were trained to do. All right. Appreciate it. What am I missing? I know I'm missing. We are talking about our sponsorship for the platform. Our sponsorship is One Way Publishing. One Way Publishing sponsors Black and Blue, this platform that's coming at you right now. It also sponsors the Sergeant Be Safe cartoons that you just saw one at the beginning of this intro here, and also is a book publishing company. Therefore, their motto is they can turn a mere thought into a book that's bought. If you ever wanted to write your own book, whether it was fiction, nonfiction, whatever, what have you, make sure you subscribe or check out the platform One Way Publishing. The website's in the comment section, and it is also in the description box, whatever platform you're on. I see that. Yeah, thank you. But if you ever wanted to write your own book or be a guest on the show or do the voiceover for a Sergeant Be Safe cartoon, please feel free to reach out to workwithclee.com. That's the website. Passport. Yeah, that's a website for One Way Publishing. All right. Trying to get all this out here. This is going to be a shorter show. I got a couple, like I said, it's been a busy couple months from going to trainings, from things going on, from upgrades and a lot of other things that is going on behind the scenes. So therefore, this show is going to be very straightforward and straight to the cut. It's going to be an interesting show. It's going to be a good show. A lot of good material on here. So make sure you tag, like, share, subscribe. I don't have many ads or many commercials, or I don't have the normal Sergeant Be Safe cartoons or Sergeant Stoic, the AI guys explaining what this situation is today. We're gonna have the intro here, and we're gonna jump right into the interview. All right, but if you have, like Rich already did, if you want to put your name and where you're from in the comments section, I truly appreciate it. Make sure you guys hit the like button, give you the shout out that you're looking for throughout this. We're going to be talking about, again, burnout with JT King, and I got something from his website I wanted to share with you guys. A quick blurb here. He's got the playbook, the playbook unplugging from the lies and transforming your mindset. All right. Take full control of your police career and never feel unprepared again. Do you feel lost? Do you feel unprepared for your future? Are you sick of being lied to? You are not alone. Law enforcement is an unforgiving profession. It's more difficult than ever to make it all the way. Sorry about that. Small print. And the worst part of it is grinding for years under false beliefs. Now it's time to rip off the blindfold and uncover the hard truths about law enforcement. Only then can you take full control of your career and you will achieve your full potential. You went into law enforcement because you wanted to help people, to be one of the good guys, to wake up every day committed to the mission and the people you work alongside with. You are part of the thin blue line. You're excited just to go out and become the person that anyone is calling to help. You see real victims suffering from real crimes and realize you're the one showing up to be the hero when they need it on their worst day. You have some wins, some losses, but you feel good. You're doing good work. You're doing what's right, and you feel good about it. Your mentality shifts. You start sacrificing a little bit of your personal life because it's for a good cause. Your team needs you. The shift needs you. The job needs you. The problem. So you take less time off and tell your spouse why you won't be at the birthday party or the kids' game. You get used to accepting overtime because it helps make up for the 2% raise that may or may not be funded this upcoming year. Weekends end up looking like weekdays because you spend them working on overtime instead of at home. But you keep going because this mission is important. You've committed to it. You end up chasing that 20 or 30-year retirement, knowing that one day all your hard work will pay off. Then you'll have enough time to go and enjoy the fruits of your labor, to enjoy the simple things, to spend more time with your loved ones. After all, you've given your blood, sweat, and tears since day one of the police academy. And then that day you realize how long this journey is. And along the way, well, you get to deal with poor leadership, policies that don't make sense. You take blame for something another cop did on the other side of the country. Even if you never did anything wrong, you work with disgruntled colleagues that have zero motivation to perform, average at best. And then you try to manage work-life balance, attempting to avoid trauma from creeping into your family. But ultimately, the fatigue leads to a loss of devotion to the mission and ends up with a complete lack of fulfillment. It adds up to stress, creates anxiety, and leaves you mentally exhausted. You're blindsided. Your agency takes you for granted. One day you realize that all the work you did on behalf of your department does not matter. You're just as replaceable as the next guy. I know this because this happened to me. I fell in love with the job. It became what it defined me as, what I defined myself as. Sorry. Every goal I had was a professional one. All the while, I sacrificed those family events, missed birthdays, pushed back vacation, told my wife I couldn't take the day off because the guys needed me. My career progressed and advanced so much to what I set out to do, but at the same time, my personal life began to crumble. Those sacrifices came with the consequences. I suffered deep depression for the first time in my life. I indulged in alcohol to cope with the stresses of the job and the life that comes with it. Soon enough, I found myself divorced. To make matters worse, I discovered many of the things I've been told since the police academy were lies. We'll have your back. Just do the right thing and you'll be fine. This is a family. I was going through the most difficult time of my life and I was alone. Soon I was facing the end of my police career with no idea where to go. And I'd watched my family fall apart in the process. That's when I took matters into my own hands. I started working. I took ownership of my future. I got off the depression medication that I've been prescribed and replaced it with commitment to myself and getting my life back on track. I accepted that no one is coming to save me. It was me and only me who was going to fix it, and I did. I spent the next 4 years transitioning to the private sector, carving out my new path and seeking new skills that I needed to do. Don't get me wrong, it was difficult, but I made it. And the lessons I learned, I will hold on for life. But what shocks me the most is I look back on my experiences on how I had been blindsided and unprepared for the realities of this profession. And that's why he created this playbook. Who? None other than JT King. JT King, he has his website up, survivepolicing.com. I'll have it scrolling below. Most cops don't have a plan for what's next. Don't be most cops. That's his phrase. He's been 14 years in law enforcement. He specialized in 2 special units. He was successfully transferred into the private sector, and he got to build Survive Policing on his website with over 51,000 followers. In 2021, he coaches still, and he does it currently. And then military vets and first responders. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I'm going to bring to the stage. I'm going to bring the interview to the stage with JT King. I hope you enjoy it. Make sure you tag, like, share, subscribe, put your questions or comments in the box, and we'll get to them. All right? Perfect. And we are live, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Thank you guys for tuning in. I got a special guest for us right here. We got JT King. JT, thank you for making yourself available for us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. I'm glad to have you. Let's kick the interview off by let me asking you this. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what gave you that burning desire to get into law enforcement?
Yeah, so I'm a former law enforcement officer, spent 14 years in law enforcement. Really, it came down to, lineage. My grandfather was a police officer, spent 27 years working in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
Left for a little while and then became chief of police in a town down in Virginia many years ago. Mm-hmm. And so growing up, to be honest with you, until I was about 18 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was always interested in business. And so I actually ended up starting college to pursue a business degree.
Okay.
But when I was in high school, 9/11 happened. And so I think that kind of shaped a lot of my generation. And so a few years after 9/11, I graduated high school, went to college, and it wasn't for me. And I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But I did know that my grandfather had led an interesting life, and to be honest, led a really good life based on all his time and service. And so I did 2 years of college, ended up enlisting in the United States Air Force as military police, got out, went into civilian law enforcement, and really, once I made that decision, there was just no looking back.
Gotcha. Totally understand. I know burning desire hits early in life oftentimes, and then, as you grow, you change gears, and then one way or another, we come back to it and somehow. So thank you for your service in the Air Force, even though Army leads the way, but we'll keep that to ourselves. And thank you for your service in law enforcement. I truly appreciate that. Can you elaborate on some of the experiences and things that you've done while you were in the career of law enforcement itself?
Yeah, so my passion was always just being proactive. I was fortunate enough that I worked in an agency in a pretty large county right outside of Washington, D.C.
Okay.
There's a lot of opportunities, and when we were about to graduate the police academy, there was 6 districts, and I wanted to go to the busiest one, and fortunately I got that. I was able to do that, and it was a super interesting place to work on patrol. I loved it for the most part. Obviously, it was very challenging, but yeah, it was a great experience. And then I was fortunate enough to end up selected as a member of a street crimes unit in the same basic area, but again, just doing all proactive work, which was a great learning experience. And I was part of some great teams, and we just did a ton of great work, and it was fun. We really got involved in a lot of different things. And I was fortunate enough. I worked with some really good guys, ended up on some really good teams that we all very much shared the same values and just drive to kind of do what we were doing. And eventually that parlayed into being selected for a plainclothes unit, which again was kind of the same thing. Went there and was doing kind of an elevated level of that same type of work. And I loved it. It was fantastic. We got a lot of different experiences, and I worked with a lot of people that were much more experienced than me, and just was able to learn so much. It was. I look back, and I'm very happy with the work I did put in, and it's kind of led to some of the things I talk about today, where I see a lot of people that I think are going down a different path, and I think at one point or another, at the end of their careers, they might regret. But yeah, I think putting that work in, I've kind of love investigations. That's really been my passion. I guess it probably kind of comes down to just like problem solving and kind of taking something from nothing and creating something out of it. I just really love that. And you can do that in police work. So yeah, that was really my passion along the way.
Very much so. Thank you for sharing that. I really particularly like the fact that you like to be proactive. Getting into law enforcement, being proactive means you like to stay on top of things. You like to help people out. You like to solve crimes. You like to be right there in the middle of the mess and kind of clean up the mess that you didn't create. However, you're still trying to clean it up to have a peaceful and positive outcome. So therefore, with that being said, do you think that leads to a lot of some of the mental health and wellness that we talk about here in law enforcement, or the burnout that a lot of officers see between like ages 10 to 12 years in or so, maybe even 8 to 12 years in?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think being proactive is necessarily what causes burnout, right? I think it certainly could add to it. I think being in a high tempo area certainly leads to it. When I first got on patrol, I was even in field training, and we saw guys that, because it was such a busy area, you had guys that had been on 5-10 years that probably had accumulated the same experience as someone working 20 years somewhere else, right? So that that's certainly, going call to call, back to back every day, that's going to lead to burnout one way or another. Right. When it comes to like burnout itself, I mean, there's a number of different factors, right? I don't think as a profession we do ourselves any good by kind of pretending some of the things that are there that aren't, or aren't there that are. To me, it kind of comes down to your confidence, right? Because whether you're being proactive or not, if you don't have confidence in what you're doing and you don't have confidence in your abilities to handle whatever it is that is going to come, that's certainly going to lead to burnout, because I think it leads to uncertainty, a lack of confidence, and then that directly leads to stress, right? Because then you're always kind of thinking, well, I'm probably not capable. And I think, that does lead to a lot of officers that then find themselves in a position where they're not trying to be proactive and they're just trying to make it through their career. I've always kind of had the philosophy, and again, I've talked to a lot of police officers, and the one thing I've always found kind of curious is those police officers that, again, I saw some of them myself that would get off field training, and very shortly after just kind of succumb to sitting around, hanging out, waiting for the call. And I mean, it does a few things. One, it degrades your abilities, but it also degrades your, I think, your judgment, your decision making, and then your, everything that kind of comes around that. And once you kind of fall into that rut, it's hard to get back out of it.
It is very much.
Yeah, and I saw people like that, and luckily, I was always motivated to kind of keep achieving and trying to just become more of a more proficient officer. And what I also saw was that at some point, all of those officers that kind of, took time off or took a break on the job, eventually they got to a point where they're tired of being on patrol. They're tired of being, having to go do the same thing every day. And then, by the time they're ready to go try to promote or go to a different unit, like, they don't have the resume to be able to do it. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, unfortunately. And then kind of, again, that manifests into a lot of the frustration with the job itself. We can talk a lot about like unfairness in law enforcement, and that's obviously a fact of life in law enforcement and pretty much every other walk of life. But if you don't try to mitigate that with just putting in the work and kind of building your own resume, like, you're not going to make it any better for yourself. And that can be a very stressful thing, I imagine, as well. Once you get to that point, you kind of feel stuck. So
imagining. So I understand watching those guys too, who weren't self-motivated, like you said, and just kind of waited for the calls to come to them, as opposed to them being proactive or not staying up on case law or just certain things, changes in your zone or beat wherever you may work, just not getting out and knowing the public and certain things like that. Like you said, stress starts to creep in, and along with stress comes cortisol. And along with this job, we do a lot of sitting, then we go from 0 to 10 very quickly. We work long hours, we work overnight. The job is not conducive for us to have cortisol and be healthy. So therefore, physical fitness starts to slip. And it's a cadre of a slippery slope that we start to fall down. And I've seen a lot of officers go down, great officers at that, start off great, and then they end up down that slippery slope. And you look at them like, what happened? And you kind of wish that you could be there to help them through the moment of change. But sometimes you don't know that change has happened until you've already seen the final outcome.
Yeah, and no, you put it perfectly. And I think what a lot of police officers don't realize is how quickly that can happen. I mean, if you even think, I'm sure everyone that in law enforcement has experienced, taking like a vacation, whether it's like a week or 2 weeks, whatever, and you come back and you almost feel like you have to reacclimate to it because it's such a different environment, right? You go into a job that is very high stress, dynamic, and if you aren't physically and mentally prepared, the moment that call hits, if you're not prepared ahead of time, it's going to feel like you're just thrown into the wolves. So, I talk a lot about the importance of, I call it operational engagement, but just always having a consistent engagement with the job, really. Because the more time you kind of spend avoiding the calls or just trying to like not get out and do the work, your body, your mind, it's just not prepared as it would be if you're constantly trying to at least get involved in situations. I mean, the best thing about I think good field training programs is exactly that, is you're constantly going from every call that you can, because you have to develop those experiences. Because without those experiences, you have nothing to work from. And so if you proactively disengage from that, it's going to be tough. Every time you you avoid talking to people, like it's going to be hard for you to get out and engage with people. And you see it all the time where people are just cops are, become very disgruntled and bitter, and you can see it in their conversations that they have, even with like victims and witnesses of crime, not just suspects. And that really leads to like you said, it's a slippery slope that continues, and it's the only way to really mitigate that is, I think, everyone taking personal account of what they are doing in this job. I mean, I've always found it funny that so many people that get into law enforcement to not actually like do the job. I've told a lot of people there's a lot of things you can do, making similar or more money. That's a lot less stressful than this job. And so, like, if you're going to avoid the best parts of it, which are really, the purpose of what you're doing. I mean, again, that tells me one of two things, which is like, that wasn't really what you were interested in to begin with. Or you're in a position where you just feel stuck and you don't know that there's another way, or you feel like you just have to I guess, ride it out as far as you can. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on that. I know a lot of guys, they do get to the point where they feel stuck, or like, what else is there? I've already done everything. I've had every experience, or this just not for them. They find out a few years later. I want to kind of transition to where, like you said in the beginning of the interview, you went to school because you had a business mindset. You wanted to go into some sort of business, but you got that bug from 9/11. It kind of transitioned you to like, I got to serve. I found my purpose, and my purpose is to serve the community and give back. With that transition, going from law enforcement to becoming an entrepreneur, can you explain that transition to us, and how maybe that may be the next step for officers who feel that they're stuck in that role right now?
Yeah, I mean, the reality was, when I was, 17, 18, with this idea of like, hey, I'd love to start a business, I just had no idea like where to even go with it. And fast forward 20 years later, basically, everything's become a lot easier to do that. And so, kind of near the end of my career, I was going through a lot of personal struggles, and kind of, if you look back at that time, I ended up officially exiting law enforcement in 2021. And so we were coming off of COVID, or kind of still in COVID, right? George Floyd had, happened the year before, which kind of caused a complete shift in the profession itself.
Yes.
And, add into that, my own personal challenges. And I ended up getting offered a good position, opportunity outside of law enforcement. And I ended up taking it. But along the way, I was also, again, trying to just experiment. I had very much an interest in business and entrepreneurship, and the internet and social media just kind of broke down the barrier to entry to a lot of those things. So I got really deep into studying and kind of learning about social media and marketing. And I was never a social media guy. I had a Facebook for like a few months back in like 2010 or something. It just wasn't, it wasn't my thing. So I wasn't really well versed in it, but I ended up learning quite a bit about digital marketing, to the point where I was actually, essentially as a side business, doing some client work with email marketing. And so in 2021, April 2021, I was 3 or 4 months into being in the private sector, which was a totally new experience. And it was very challenging, very interesting, and I learned a lot from it. But at that point, I knew in the back of my mind that based on my experiences, not only in law enforcement, but my personal struggles I had gone through the last few years, and then kind of seeing what happened with, law enforcement during that time. And then again, making this new transition, I knew that at some point I was experiencing things that would be a benefit to other police officers. And, again, at that time, and I think over the preceding years, we've seen a lot of officers that ended up exiting law enforcement for those exact reasons. So
in droves,
yeah. And, I just knew that whatever I was going through, that like, I'm not going to be the last one. So I just kind of had this idea of, I wanted to kind of just share my insights and get back and kind of share some of these experiences that I had with other police officers. I didn't know how that was going to look, but at the same time, I was, doing some of this marketing stuff. And I knew I just had to kind of get in touch with social media more, because, that's where all this stuff kind of lives. And
Yeah.
so you have to have an understanding of it. So I started the Instagram page. I didn't think too much about it, to be honest with you. I knew the one topic I knew better than anything was law enforcement. So I came up with a name, Survive Policing, started the page, and it's been a little over 4 years. And it kind of manifested into kind of what I wanted it to be, again, with no idea of how to get there. But yeah, you know, started the page and just started posting every day. And to be honest with you, probably the first year was just, I don't even know. I don't even remember what I was posting. It probably wasn't very good. But after about a year, you know, I started just after, you know, consistently posting every day, started gaining a small following. And then I remember I posted a few things that were very much like uncut, you know, opinions that I had based on some of the things that I had read that I just thought like somebody needs to say something about this. And so I posted it, and I tell a story. Like the next day I opened up Instagram and probably had like 50 messages from people. And again, like I think I had like 1,000 followers at that point, but you don't really see it. You don't really see those people. They weren't really interacting much, but now I'm like, oh, wow, these are like real people and they're real police officers, and they're not really like commenting on stuff, but they're there and they're paying attention. And I think it just resonated with people. One, because I said things that weren't overly unique, I think, but things that a lot of people just aren't able or aren't willing to say. And people saw that. And so that was kind of like the light bulb moment of you know, I'm on to something. So I just kind of leaned into that. And over the next few years, really just talked about all the things that we kind of know are true in law enforcement. But unfortunately, we, as a profession and in a lot of cases, and most cases, leadership kind of, I guess, doesn't want to share for one reason or another. And it just connected with people. You know, I think it was unique in the way I was presenting it too, which really was just kind of came from the things I was learning in marketing, to be honest with you. But hitting those emotional triggers, I guess, for police officers. And also, you know, being committed to not only highlighting the problem, but at least giving some type of insight into the solution, I think was important. You can go on social media and it's, you know, 90% of it's kind of entertainment and 90% of that's like not good entertainment. But I wanted to just have some substance. I thought that was extremely important, and it's worked. I think it's just a matter of, you know, giving people something that it means something. There's substance there. Understanding, like having a deep passion for this profession. You know, the one thing that you can probably pick out on social media a lot is people that just don't, they're kind of talking about something they don't know. I knew how cops talk. I know what they care about, and I know what they're thinking in a lot of ways because I was there. And so I just leaned into that. And I think that authenticity was kind of shown through even these kind of static posts that just had, you know, text with a black background. But the words meant something, and people can tell that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, I appreciate the fact that you have a unique experience and you're in a unique position also because of your experiences and things that you've gone through. You're in the position that you can say things, for lack of a better term, you're uncuffed. So therefore, you don't have to worry about the same kind of repercussions that active duty law enforcement does, even if they're thinking the same thoughts or having the same kind of experiences. A lot of things we keep them inside and we hold on to them for fear of some sort of retaliation, in-house retaliation, or for fear of being written up or whatever it may be. You want to avoid that, but to actually have somebody be able to express those opinions, those facts, those ideas, and put them out there is a great thing, because it's a sounding board for everyone else who can't legitimately. I don't know what that is. Is that me?
I think it is.
I think it is too. I'm not sure what that is. But regardless, hopefully it's. That's the first time I've ever heard that. But to be able to speak for those who can't speak is a true thing. It's a wonderful thing. It puts you. Of course, you're going to gain a lot of fellowship from that, because you're able to be the sounding board that is very much so needed. Yeah,
and it all kind of stemmed from you know, again, I had very real beliefs about kind of what was being facilitated by leadership and policing. I mean, to me, cops deserve to know the truth, good and bad, right? And I think we sell them a bill of goods a lot of cases. We create this idea of, and you've heard all the slogans, you know, the thin blue line and the brotherhood and stuff like that. And again, a lot of that stuff is kind of vapid talk. You know, the only way for police officers to make good decisions and good judgments for themselves and their families is to know the truth. And I truly believe that. And I think it's a complete disservice that we don't allow them to understand that. And you see a lot of leadership that would prefer to not be that way. But, you know, being deceived, or the feeling of being deceived. And again, this happens probably with every police officer at some point or another, where they thought one thing and then they realized, whether it's through their own experience or seeing someone else, that they were lied to. You know, you can go down the line of, you know, you think your department has your back, or you're going to get this type of support when this happens. And then they realize that's not the case. And then they feel deceived. And what does that lead to? It leads to more of that cynicism about the job. And it's dangerous. You know, law enforcement does present a very real dichotomy, where everyone that goes into it, similar to the military, you are going to sacrifice something. That's part of the agreement you make. With that though, I think we need to be honest about the fact that you're not then joining in a profession that will then again catch you whenever you fall necessarily, right? It will be up to you to work in your own best interest. And it's tough, because you say that and you have one side say that this is their calling, and the brotherhood and this and that, and look, I get it. I think that's all what we would love about the job, and I think there's absolutely parts of the job where that's true, right? There's a small group of guys that I still talk to, and I'll talk to and forever. But the large majority, I don't hear from any of those people, right? That's just the reality. So we just have to be honest. And again, I think this all also impacts recruitment, training, how our officers kind of hit the street. I think when we recruit people with with this idea that they're joining something that is greater than themselves, that's good. But I think it also leads to recruiting people that have a very high self view of themselves, and that can lead to very much this authoritarian type of complex that you see with a lot of officers, that as opposed to understanding that essentially kind of not having empathy for the people that they work with, they look down on those people. And again, those are the things that when we see these situations in a lot of cases that get a lot of media attention, sometimes it's just bad judgment, poor decision making, but it all stems from the same thing. It all stems from, in a lot of cases, recruiting the wrong people, deceiving them into thinking that this job is something that it's not, and giving them a very high self-worth in terms of the way they view the rest of the world, unfortunately. And I just think those are conversations that need to be had. And unfortunately, people outside of the profession aren't really equipped to have those conversations. We need to have those inside, because
in-house.
And, who are we to let someone else dictate the way we grow this profession? And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I mean that in we have to be able to recognize the real deficiencies in the job, and address those as opposed to kind of just go along with what the media or someone outside the job says is the problems. Because otherwise we're not going to actually address those problems that then do manifest into these situations that we see a lot on the news.
Exactly. It's amazing. And I say that for lack of a better term. the newer recruits that we get, again, recruitment, you hear those phrases like you touched on. It's a thin blue line, it's a brotherhood, and I do agree that it's a thin blue line and it's a brotherhood when we're all going through the same door to go fight a common purpose and a mission. When we're on the job and it's go time, yes, I do believe we all have each other's backs. We're there for each other, whether you like the individual next to you or not. You know that individual is going to cover you long range down the hall while you cover on a door or whatever it may be. But then you come to the other end of the job, the caveat to where since it's a brotherhood, a thin blue line, then when it's personal issues or situations that are maybe with family, it's kind of like it's a distraction. You may get the crab in the barrel kind of mentality where you get thrown under the bus again, and then you're like, what happened to that thin blue line? What happened to that brotherhood? We don't have the brotherhood when a certain such officer was involved in the situation and everyone pulled away from him, So I think it's two sides of the same coin. And like you said, it's something that needs to be addressed and discussed and put out there to be very truthful to the newer recruits. Well, let me if a newer recruit would come to you and they would see survivepolicing.com and they would want to talk to you, what kind of advice would you give them? If I was a new recruit and I'm saying, JT, I want to get into law enforcement, I just don't know what the next steps are or what I should be looking out for. Can you help me?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing, especially nowadays, is to be very discerning about where you're applying to and trying to work. I think nowadays, you do have a little bit more choice, I guess, as to where you want to work because there is a struggle in terms of retention. And I think a lot of the things that have happened over the past few years have caused, the good agencies to become better and the bad agencies to become worse, essentially, which I think is actually a very important thing to happen in the profession. There are good agencies out there with good leadership. People joke a lot with me. It's like, okay, well, where are they? I promise you they are out there. I hear from a lot of cops that do enjoy where they work. Now, a lot of those cops also had to go through another agency or two to get to that point, right? Which is why it just pays to be proactive ahead of time, doing the ride-alongs and really understanding, again, everyone comes in the job saying that they want to help people. I get it. But you truly have to understand, like, what is it in the job that you want? And find the people that also share those same values as best as you can tell, right? I mean, I think the most important thing is finding an agency where the leadership does support proactive criminal enforcement because that is the job. I mean, I've said it before, there's no one else is tasked with locking up criminals except for the police. Like, it's no one else's job. So if the police aren't going to do it and your leadership doesn't want you to do it, I would steer far away from that agency. And again, find an agency that does support that, because those at least are hopefully the leaders that are going to then support you in terms of training and resources and having your back when if you do get in a situation, whether you make a good choice, bad choice, whatever, they at least have the support and will give you the due process you deserve in order to get through that. That's the big thing. Again, I think we could have a whole discussion on recruitment. It is tough when we're recruiting very young people, right? Because I think one of the most important things, if I had a magic wand and I could give every police officer one thing, it would just be life experience. I think again, kind of going back to our conversation about how the slippery slope and how things evolve into these situations we see on the media, it all kind of starts with people that don't have the right life experience and aren't able to develop it along the way to be able to deal with the situations that they're dealing with. When people ask me, especially young people, they say, hey, I'm 20 years old. I'm going to apply to the police department. Like, what should I be doing in the meantime? I mean, my suggestion is to do anything you can to be able to engage with different types of people in all different types of scenarios, whether that's working at, I've heard a lot of people say like working as a bartender is like the best thing you can do. I would agree. Bartender,
I can believe that.
Waiter, which any situation where you are dealing with a lot of different people. The bartender example is one where people say, hey, like you're going to be dealing with a lot of intoxicated people, so that makes sense. But any situation where you are having to deal with different types of people, life experience gives you perspective, and perspective builds that empathy that you need, again, to avoid that getting to that point where you believe. I think we get into a real dangerous point where we believe that we're better than the people we police. Because immediately we put ourselves in a position that we're going to be we're not going to have the empathy we need. And it's not about like, being soft or anything like that. Every great police officer, investigator has a high level of social and emotional intelligence, period. End of story. The same ability or the same skill set that allows you to talk seamlessly with a witness or a victim of a crime is the same one that you're going to use to talk to a suspect and get them to admit to a crime, or you're going to be able to assess their behavior to determine that they are involved in something, and also to make the right decision. So anything you can do, it's tough when we have young people that what are you supposed to do? Like, if you don't have significant life experience, you just don't have it. Now, I think there's a lot of things we can do when we get those people into a police department, which is we need to give them those experiences, and we need to surround them with people that have them. But I would also say, like, if I was to talk to a young person, keep this in mind. Like, you have to find something. Like, you have to be proud of what you're going to do. You have to have a passion for it, but also have little expectation of like any acknowledgement.
True. Yeah.
Because really, what matters in the job, the street work, the investigations, the case work that you do, most times no one's going to know about it except for you. And you have to be okay with that. And that really comes down to, like, do you believe in the mission that you're part of? If you don't believe that, then everything kind of unravels, because you're going to be seeking that acknowledgement and that admiration. I, personally, I just don't think that's the way to go. So I think if you're interested in law enforcement, you have to understand exactly what it is that you're going to be or should be asked to do. And it's going to be, again, no recognition or very little recognition or admiration.
Right.
And you do it because it's the right thing to do when you're trying to help a victim, solve a case, right? It all comes back to that.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that. That was a good answer. I appreciate that. And it's very much so true. Again, a lot of the younger guys and gals, that get in the profession, that do look for accolades or to be celebrated or to be praised on social media page or to be honored at the next award ceremony. And realistically, they, in their mind, get overlooked, but they're working out there, working hard. It's not a shame or what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a kick in their character, because that's just the nature of the beast. Most times, the best things that you do for victims or the community itself go unnoticed, and you yourself celebrate internally. Maybe you'll get one or two victims that come back at that moment, or maybe even years later that come back and give you that thank you. That's normally the accolades that you want and need and look for in those moments. But a huge ticker tape parade's really not going to happen.
Yeah, I've told this story before to some people, but the most fulfillment the most feeling of fulfillment I got out of the job was those times where you get a call or you go and you make that stop in the middle of the day and uncover the criminal activity, work through the case, take that person to jail, drop them off. You have all your paperwork sitting next to you that, tomorrow you're going to have to organize. You're sweaty, you're tired, you're hungry. You haven't talked to your spouse for 3-4 hours, maybe the entire day. But you identified the crime, you took that person off the street and you put them in jail. Like those fleeting moments where you're leaving the jail, like that was the time where I was like, okay, like this was a good day. And again, that's just one perspective, but I think if you don't get that feeling and that doesn't give you some type of fulfillment, this might not be the job for you. But yeah, and again, to me, like just personally, I kind of look at that as I think I enjoy solving problems and working through complex issues and trying to get from one end to the other and creating something out of nothing, right? We talked about like business and entrepreneurship, being proactive, doing some proactive street work. That's basically what you're doing. You're taking nothing and turning it into something, and you're uncovering the things that other people aren't. Again, that's the best part of the job to me. So if you're not interested in that, there might be other aspects of the job that that really might be your passion. But at the end of the day, like if you want to go into police work, the police work is really what you should be passionate about.
Yeah. So,
I think that's why also, and not to cut you off,
go ahead.
you talked about, people on social media and stuff like that. Again, I think the largely the community sees through a lot of these people that just, again, it's posting all about themselves. It's posting the accolades and the this and that, and they see through that. I mean, it's, it's kind of superficial in a way, and there's not a lot of substance there. And again, if that's what you're into, that's cool. But sadly, I think that's also something that people are seeing that want to get into law enforcement, and they think like, okay, that's what it's about, and it's really not. Like you said, like most of the stuff. I have a resume I'm very proud of. No one will ever see it unless they ask for it. It's one of those things. But I that's what makes me proud, and I go look back and say, okay, like this was really good work. That's enough for me, because that's what mattered to me. All the other stuff didn't really matter. But again, like when we talk about the sacrifice, making personal sacrifices for this job that's difficult, that is that difficult. That's a tough thing to deal with when you're looking back at what you've done in your career, what you want to do with it. So
getting to the end of the career and being proud of yourself all the way through it is a big deal. I've seen a lot of retired guys go out one way or another. Usually one way where they're very happy. I did my best. I worked very hard. I strive to make a difference, whether I'm remembered or not. I know that I put in the work and I'm satisfied with where I'm at, and I can walk away from law enforcement with no regrets, or little to no regrets, and go off and do whatever, fishing, working on cars, whatever it may be, and be happy with that. Then you got those other guys that are burned out, that are mad with their department, mad with their family, disgruntled. They made it to the end of their career only because the clock ran out. They weren't satisfied with what they did. They didn't get to join the teams they wanted to join, or get the promotions they wanted, and they go out very bitter. And their speech is at the end of the retirement speech is kind of like, whoa, it's kind of like a little burning a little bit. And you see that, and then you model those two retirees, and you see what they of them, and they're your personal resume of them, and you pick and take what you need from one, or you don't. Like, he was retired. When he retired, he was angry. He did this, so I'm not going to go that route. I'm going to go this route.
Yeah, and the sad reality is, like you said, all of us are good. Everyone that goes in the profession is going to be a former cop one day, right? There will be a day, whether it's by your choice or not, that you are now an ex-police officer. And that's a very difficult transition for anybody. And you're, again, the second they take your badge and access away, like you're no longer part of the team, right? And that is, again, something that we shouldn't hide from. We need to share those types of things with the younger cops. I had a conversation with a very good friend of mine recently about the same thing, and not share a kind of an overview of the conversation, because it's relevant to what you just said. He had one of the best cops I've ever worked with, bar none. Had put a ton of work in, and had sacrificed a lot of time with his family over the years in pursuit of not only what he was able to achieve, but also some things that he wasn't able to for one reason or another. Some things that he wanted to do that he would have people tell him, hey, you need to do this or that to get to that point. And it just never worked out. And, he was reminiscing and thinking through all these years that he had put in, and basically questioning, hey, like, was it worth it? Was all this work I put in, knowingly sacrificing that time away from family and children, to just have the door shut in my face anyways? Like, was it worth it? I think luckily for him, again, he has a resume that is overly impressive. So he has that to look back on. But I think we'll all question those different decisions. Was it worth, again, working evenings half your career and not seeing your kids grow up? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But we deserve to have those conversations, and we deserve to share that information with the cops that are coming up, so they can make those decisions, because ultimately those decisions, like, you're not going to be able to take them back, whether you had a good career or not. So, and I think this all, like, adds up to, we do need people that have a strong sense of those things, of what they care about, what their values are, what they're willing to sacrifice and what they're not, and
Yeah.
being able to stand on those values, because it's so easy to kind of fall into that trap of like falling in love with the job and just kind of going with, okay, well, the expectation is my marriage is going to suffer, but that's just part of the game, right? And in some cases it will be, but at least we should be able to make those choices for ourselves, and better live with them.
Yeah. Thanks for explaining that as well. So if someone was to go to your website, survivepolicing.com, it's scrolling below. It'll also be in the description box in the comment section as well. And I know if they subscribe to that, they would automatically get a newsletter. What kind of trainings should they expect if they dig deep into it, or what kind of learning tools do you provide with survivepolicing.com?
Yeah, so Survive Policing, for a lot of the first few years of it, I was really talking about this transition from law enforcement to the private sector, or out of the job. Right. And I kind of actually ended up talking a lot more about tactics and techniques to use as a police officer, because I would get so many questions about it, and I realized that there's so many people that were passionate about doing proactive work. So now I kind of split my time. So if you go to Survive Policing, you join the newsletter, the first thing you'll get is basically a 5-step journey that I took from law enforcement to entrepreneurship, where I am now. Okay. And then after that, I'm basically sending emails every week, kind of highlighting and giving better techniques of how to walk that journey, leaving law enforcement, getting in the private sector, doing whatever you want, whether it's business, whatnot. And so I just try to share as much information as I can. I do offer, if you want to work with me one-on-one, that's available too. Okay. I've hopped on calls with probably hundreds of police officers now over the years, just trying to share whatever insights I can about the job and after the job. So that's Survive Policing. I'm also deeply involved with Police Post. So if you go to policepost.com, that's where our police training is available, and we're actively building that out, building a team of experts that we're focused on the street cops, guys working the road, and trying to fill that gap of not only training in general, but training for those folks specifically. I think we a lot of times, at least in the training space, we neglect those individuals that are working the road, trying to do proactive work, trying to do good, and trying to learn. We focus very much on those that have already elevated to like a detective or investigator's position. So we're trying to give fill that gap for the guys working the road that want to learn about proactive work, interdiction, interview and interrogation, roadside interviews, stuff like that, that they might not get a chance to really learn from either their FTOs or from their own agencies. And we want to make it accessible. So that's why we're building out our online training library. We have a lot of cool things coming down the pike too, to really help enhance that experience. But yeah, those are the two places to kind of come find what I'm doing. And Survive Policing on Instagram is where I post pretty much everything. A lot of mindset stuff, kind of just talking about the job, the same things that we've discussed, but going deeper into, understanding what the job is like and how to make better decisions going forward for yourself and your career.
Okay, so survivepolicing.com and policepost.com would be the two or two ways for anyone to get your content or contact you.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, perfect. JT, we had a great conversation, and I appreciate you making yourself available and coming on the platform. And through the course of conversation, I may have forgot to ask a question, or I may have actually jogged your memory on something that you wanted to touch on. Is there anything else that you want to share with us right now? The floor is yours.
Oh man. I know we had talked about the idea of what is survival in modern policing, right? And I jotted down a few notes, just kind of thinking that through. We talked about being proactive. I think that's extremely important. You can't get stagnant in this job. The threat is just too real and it's too dynamic. You have to be prepared for it. And that's not just being proactive on the streets. It's also being proactive in your training and development, right? You have to keep your capabilities up. We talked about case law earlier. Again, case law is free. It's only a matter of what the time you put into studying and reading it. I love case law, so it was very easy for me. But find passion within these topics, because this is really what makes you a capable and proficient police officer. You got to be multidimensional. So it's not just about case law; it's about combatives, fitness, building rapport with people, understanding how to deal with different types of people in different types of situations, and then just and all these things basically lead to that confidence that you can control your career and your life. And if you don't do it, someone else will.
Yeah.
So it's all about just keeping that in mind. I mean, aside from that, if we look at, if you're kind of North Star in law enforcement, it's really just decision making and critical thinking. So everything that kind of leads to that, to be able to enhance your decisions on the street, that is what will mitigate the dangers to you and perhaps save your life, and help you deal with a very difficult career and very difficult situations along the way. So just hope people keep that in mind and stay focused.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. Again, thank you for coming on the platform and explaining how it is, how important confidence is, like you discussed in the beginning, how being proactive, how being multi-dynamic and multi-dimensional as far as knowing case law, knowing the law to back you up, being physically fit, and so many things on patrol. Just have critical thinking for the critical incident that will happen. Eventually it will happen, and you might be that guy. So therefore, being as prepared as you can, getting as much experiences as you can, you have something to fall back on to use to get you through that critical incident as well. So thank you for sharing all that, JT. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So JT, I appreciate you coming on the show again. Make sure you, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, go to the websites, check out his material. If you need something from him, if you need to go ahead and you're transitioning from one point to another, or you're looking for that training, this is the place to go. Thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate you guys, and we'll continue on with the rest of the show later. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I hope you liked it. The interview was dynamic. We got to talk a little bit before we started recording. We got to talk a little bit after recording, and it was a great conversation. JT, if you're watching or you're watching a replay, thank you for making yourself available again. Thank you for all the comments in there. Shayla, I see you on here. Great information. It was some great information, especially for those who are either trying to transition out of being a first responder or in law enforcement, or those are the seasoned guys or the retirees. Those are more so for who it's geared toward, but it's also the new recruits, the boots, the rookies, whatever you want to call them. That's good information to know, so you can navigate through your career, what have you. So when you get to the end of it, at least you have a plan, or you gain some experience from those who've walked the trail before you. All right. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate Shayla. Wendy Luster in here gave some comments. Talk about Rich Oakley's on here. Make sure you guys check him out. Hopefully I'm not missing any more. Oh yeah, the Eagle of Justice. My man Jeff Dawkins, thank you for tuning in. I know you're a couple of time zones away, so I know that you're probably, I don't know if you're on patrol right now or what you got going on, but I appreciate you joining on the platform. This is the platform, Black and Blue. The podcast is just for you, where we go live weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And when we go live with the law enforcement officer or first responder, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree, and we talk about their trainings, experiences, and their publications. We didn't fall short today. We got it in the description box and the comment section. The only comment section is not in his LinkedIn. For some reason, I can't comment while I'm on this platform, but it is survivepolicing.com and it is policepost.com. It's also in the description box. Make sure you guys check him out. Make sure you subscribe to him, his channels, if you haven't already done so, or look him up on LinkedIn. That's how we were communicating up until that interview. I appreciate it. We got special guests next week. We got special guests coming in. Again, this is going to be like a weird kind of transitional month. Some of them are going to be live. Some of them are going to be recorded. There's a lot of things going on. And, it's summertime, along with vacations and changing of how the way the job is being done through other trainings and things like that. A lot of the behind the scenes stuff that I really can't get into, but you guys have an idea. The show will continue to go on, but it'll be different aspects on how it goes on till we get right back into the groove of it. Make sure you guys tag, like, share, subscribe. I don't have my banner going. Let me get that going. Make sure you let your friends know about it again. Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's your motivational speaker, your empowerment coach, your author, your favorite baker's favorite baker, crimes code Ecclesiastics 302, the coldest code switching detective. And my name is Clee, CLEE, continuing law enforcement edutainment. Make sure you subscribe to that Sergeant Be Safe cartoon platform on YouTube as well. And we will see you guys next week. Take care of each other. 10-4. Over and out. Let me get some of these. I didn't get to play some of this fun stuff on here. Let me give you some of this stuff. Where are we at? I'm going the wrong way on the platform. Here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Just the facts, ma'am.
Black as you is, there's a whole lot of blue still shining through.
Sergeant Be Safe is inviting you to watch this exciting and fun podcast, Black and Blue. It airs weekly at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's just for you. When we go live with a dynamic law enforcement officer or first responder, whether they're rookie, seasoned, or retiree. We talk about their trainings, experiences, and their publications. We've had tremendous guests already, and we have many, many more tremendous guests coming down the pipeline. You want to subscribe.
Sergeant Be Safe is here.
Black and Blue is on various podcasts, especially on YouTube, so make sure you guys subscribe. And don't forget about me, Sergeant Be Safe. I have my own channel too, so make sure you subscribe to that as well. We have many adventures, learning experiences, and we have fun while we do it. You guys don't want to miss it. Not only with the special guest that's being featured, you'll see video skits of me and the bad guys, Rob You Blind, Misdemeanor, Treacherous Tony, Chance Wilder, aka Wild Chance, and Sapphire Steel. And that's your tip of the day to get you on your way.
And there you have it. 10-4. Over and out. Peace.
I'm not a bad cop.
I never once said you were. It would be real simple if the problem was bad cops. It ain't.
Just the facts, ma'am.